Hey there, this is Rousseau, and welcome to this course on disruptive innovation. You've probably heard the term in business articles analyzing the success of startups that became tech giants. But the thing is, the term disruptive innovation is often applied very loosely in a vague way that makes it hard for us to learn from the examples. It's like analyzing a gold medalist's win and saying she won because she ran fast. It's true, but it doesn't get us closer to understanding how it happened. So what I'd like to do in this course is take a closer look at the definition of disruptive innovation and the typical pattern it follows. So, in this course, we'll answer 4 big questions. What is disruptive innovation really? How does disruption happen? What do people get wrong about disruption? And what can companies do to respond? By the end, you'll have a better understanding of what disruption is, how to spot it when it's happening, and how to act on it, whether you're the defender or the disruptor. Let's start with the basics. The term disruptive innovation was introduced by Clayton Christensen in 1995 Harvard Business Review article. Christensen was interested in why companies fail. In his 1997 book, The Innovator's Dilemma, he argued that very often it isn't because their executives made bad decisions, but because they made good decisions. The same kind of good decisions that had made those companies successful for decades. Christensen argues that leading companies fall behind because they cater too much to their existing customers. They focus their attention on retaining current customers at the expense of investing in the technologies that could serve future customers. To explain this further, Christensen contrasts sustaining technologies against disruptive technologies. Sustaining technologies have a gradual rate of improvement. Every year, there's an updated version of the product with an improvement on the attributes customers already appreciate in the product. Think of a new iPhone model as an example, or a new lighter laptop. They're not dramatically different from the past versions of the product, and they fulfill the same function to the same customers. These are called sustaining technologies. They tend to maintain a steady rate of improvement every year. They give customers incremental improvements on the attributes they already value. Companies love sustaining innovation because it's profitable and seemingly low risk. The company keeps creating improved products to sell for higher profits to customers. Sustaining innovation is a strategy used by companies that are typically already successful in their industry. Now, let's contrast that with disruptive technologies. This is a product with attributes that are different from what mainstream customers have thus far valued. When a disruptive technology first appears, your initial response might be, "Who needs that?" Christensen says mainstream customers are usually unwilling to use disruptive products. Instead, disruptive technologies start by appealing to a niche market. They sometimes even create new markets. An example Christensen provides is Sony's early transistor radios in the 1950s. These radios had lower sound quality, sure, but they weren't the heavy vacuum tube radios that a family would keep in their living room. Teenagers could now buy these inexpensive portable radios and listen to rock and roll without parental interference. You could say this created a whole new market for personal consumer electronics. Christensen really hammers on this point that disruptive technologies are typically cheaper, of low quality, and appeal to consumers who couldn't afford or didn't want the dominant sustaining technology in the first place. Dominant companies get blindsided by these disruptive technologies, and it's understandable. If you're a manager, pitching a product for a new market is challenging. It's hard to estimate what the market size will be. So instead, managers at big companies tend to support projects that serve existing customers. That way, they reduce risk and protect their careers by focusing on what's known and what's profitable. There's an anecdote that back in the year 2000, the founders of Netflix went to Blockbuster and tried to sell their fledgling startup for $50 million. Blockbuster CEO laughed them out of the room because they saw Netflix as a niche business with an offer that wouldn't appeal to Blockbuster's mainstream customers. And in a way, he was right. At that stage, Netflix was a DVD by mail business that appealed to movie buffs and early adopters of DVD players. But then, Netflix shifted to streaming video over the internet, and that offer started to become appealing to Blockbuster's core customers. Netflix got there by a classically disruptive path with its movement from a niche to the mainstream. And then they unseated the once powerful Blockbuster by luring away their customers. Blockbuster was at its peak in 2004 with 9,094 stores, but by 2010, just 6 years later, they filed for bankruptcy. That's how disruption plays out. It's cruel. Just imagine you're the dominant player in the market for 3 decades, then some startup comes nibbling at your feet and eventually knocks you off the throne. Could you see it coming? Well, there is a pattern to this disruption. We can distill it to 4 indicators of impending disruption. 1, the incumbent is on a sustaining innovation path. Incumbents, the dominant player in a market, are usually improving their products through sustaining innovation. They add features, boost performance, or optimize quality, serving the demands of their most profitable customers. It makes business sense. But over time, these improvements follow a predictable performance trajectory. Think of Gillette adding more and more blades to its razors. Or think of Nikon. For decades, it dominated professional photography with its interchangeable lens mount system, making gradual improvements each year, but maintaining backwards compatibility to keep its existing customer base happy became a liability. It became a technical constraint that eventually left it lagging behind competitors like Canon. Okay, here's the second indicator of impending disruption. The incumbent overshoots customer needs. After years of sustaining innovation, the market leader's products become too good, or at least more advanced than most customers actually need or want to pay for. Here's where disruption finds its opening. A new entrant steps in with something simpler, cheaper, or more accessible. Think of the portable transistor radios I mentioned earlier. It may seem inferior at first, lower quality, fewer features, smaller margins, but it's good enough for an underserved customer segment. Here's 2 more examples. Canon's desktop copiers were low-end compared to Xerox's high-end office machines, but perfect for small businesses. Netflix's mail-ordered DVDs were less convenient than Blockbuster's stores, but worthwhile if you wanted an older cult film. In both cases, the new entrant wasn't targeting the mainstream customer. They were going where the incumbent wasn't looking. Indicator 3. The incumbent is capable of responding. This is important criteria for disruption. We don't mock companies who never stood a chance. The incumbents who got unseated weren't lacking in money, talent, or information. They had the resources and capability to respond. But their organizational culture, structure, priorities, and incentives led them to ignore or dismiss the threat. Why? It's because disruption often starts in small, unprofitable, low-margin markets that look unattractive to a large company. Think of how Blockbuster once had the opportunity to buy Netflix, or how Kodak invented digital photography but shelved it to protect its highly profitable film business. The opportunity was there, the knowledge was there, but they chose not to prioritize it out of fear it would cannibalize their existing business. Indicator 4. The incumbent flounders as the newcomer moves up market. Over time, the disruptor improves its offering, it moves up market. And then, what started as a cheaper, simpler option begins to look like a better deal, even for the incumbent's core user base. Suddenly, the disruptor isn't just nibbling at the edges, they're drawing in the very customers that fueled the incumbent's profits. By then, the incumbent has lost the high ground. They're caught off guard, unable to shift their business model, and too late to catch up. The industry transforms, and the dominant players start to fall. It's not a sudden attack, but a slow drift away from relevance. Disruption isn't just about a new product. It involves reshaping customer expectations on price, accessibility, performance, or experience. It redefines the market. The theory of disruptive innovation is widely accepted and influential in business circles. The Economist called the theory one of the most influential modern business ideas. But the theory has also been misunderstood and misapplied. Since its introduction in 1995, disruption has become a catch-all label for any startup that gains ground on an incumbent. But that's not what Christensen meant. He coined the term to describe a very specific pattern of failure. If every innovation is disruptive, then the term starts to lose its meaning. Christensen is partially responsible for this dilution. In his books, he lists 77 examples of disruptive innovation. Here are some of the things on that list: Honda motorcycles, inkjet printers, Microsoft DOS, plastics, boxed meat, Barnes & Noble, online stockbrokers, and McDonald's. A study by the MIT Sloan Management Review examined Christensen's 77 examples and concluded that only 9% of the cases met all 4 criteria of Christensen's disruptive pattern. In many others, incumbents responded effectively, or the disruptors weren't actually entering at the low end. Not all incumbent companies overshot customers' needs, and many incumbents were incapable of responding to the potential disruption. This doesn't mean Christensen's theory of disruption is invalid. Rather, it highlights that real-world examples aren't a perfect fit and that it's worthwhile taking a closer look at the markers of disruption in a case study. We shouldn't slap the disruptive label on any breakthrough product or successful startup. Even Christensen acknowledged the confusion in 2015. He said this about people misapplying the theory. Too frequently, they use the term loosely to invoke the concept of innovation in support of whatever it is they wish to do. Many researchers, writers, and consultants use disruptive innovation to describe any situation in which an industry is shaken up and previously successful incumbents stumble. But that's much too broad a usage. The problem with conflating a disruptive innovation with any breakthrough that changes an industry's competitive patterns is that different types of innovation require different strategic approaches. We've seen that Christensen's theory doesn't always predict market outcomes correctly because it assumes rational decision-making. Tech analyst Ben Thompson argues that Christensen's theory is flawed because it assumes purchases are made by rational buyers who carefully consider price and performance. But consumers are not always rational. They buy based on brand, emotion, perceived status, and convenience. Factors that are hard to quantify and not something you can over-deliver on. That's why Christensen misjudged Apple's iPod and iPhone. While these products didn't enter at the low end and were technically inferior in some respects, they won through ease of use and brand perception. In Christensen's framework, mobile phone competitors offering good enough performance at lower cost should have disrupted Apple, but that hasn't happened yet. Another counterpoint to Christensen's theory comes from Kostas Markides of the London Business School. He argues that in reality, not all disruption works the same way. He proposes an update to the theory that acknowledges two distinct types of disruptive innovation. Business model innovation. This is the discovery of a fundamentally different way of competing in an existing industry. It doesn't involve inventing a new product, but rather redefines how an existing product or service is delivered, monetized, or positioned, often unlocking new demand. Think Amazon versus Barnes & Noble, or EasyJet versus British Airways. To qualify as an innovation, it must enlarge the market by attracting new customers or encouraging existing ones to consume more. Amazon didn't invent bookselling, but it redefined it through e-commerce. Likewise, Swatch didn't invent watches, but turned them into affordable fashion accessories. These innovations often appear disruptive because they reshape industry boundaries without changing the core product. 2. Radical product innovations. These create new-to-the-world products, such as a television, car, or mobile phone, that disrupt consumer habits and displace producers' existing competencies and assets. These innovations emerge from supply-side technological pushes and often face slow uptake at first because they alter behavior and require learning. Over time, however, these innovations improve to the point of being good enough or even over-engineered, at which point late entrants may outperform early pioneers by offering simpler, cheaper versions. So that is Kostas Markides' contribution to the theory of disruptive innovation. He argues that those two types of innovation follow very different dynamics, and conflating them will confuse us about how disruption occurs. So when leaders confront market shifts, it's not enough to ask, is this disruptive? You also need to ask, what kind of disruption is it? Does it meet the 4 criteria of Christensen's disruption pattern? What will motivate consumers' buying decisions? Thinking through those questions will help you choose an effective response to disruption. That's what we'll explore next, how companies, whether incumbents or challengers, can respond to disruption or even lead it. We've seen what disruption is, what it isn't, and how it unfolds. Now the question becomes, what should you do about it? Let's look at advice from the experts on how you can initiate or respond to disruption. Clayton Christensen offered a 4-step method to help companies identify and manage disruptive technologies. While recent academics have added more nuance, this framework is a good foundation to spotting and cultivating disruptive technologies. Step 1. Determine whether the technology is disruptive or sustaining. The first thing is you need to decide which of the many technologies on the horizon are disruptive and if any of them pose a real threat. You want to have a foresight process in place with a shared tool where teams can log, track, and assess potentially disruptive technologies. Christensen actually provides a funny tip on how to gauge if a technology is sustaining or disruptive. Pay attention to disagreements in your organization about new products or technologies. Which departments support it and which don't? Christensen claims that marketing and financial managers rarely support disruptive innovation, while technical staff often persist in advocating for a new technology. Such disagreements is not a red flag, it's a clue. This tension might signal that you're dealing with a disruptive technology. Despite Christensen's tip, I'd say a more reliable method to tell the difference is to look at whether the technology represents a gradual improvement in performance or whether it has the potential to create a new market. Step 2. Assess the strategic significance of the disruption. Once a potentially disruptive technology has been identified, the next step is to evaluate its strategic significance. This is where many established firms go wrong by asking the opinion of their existing customers. These customers tend to push for more performance and new features, which makes them excellent judges of sustaining innovations. But when it comes to disruptive innovations, those same customers are often the least reliable source of insight. Instead of asking, will this new technology ever outperform what we currently offer, managers should ask, will this new technology eventually change the expectations of the market? Christensen emphasized that many disruptive technologies never surpass the old technology in absolute performance terms. But that's not the point. What matters is the trajectory of improvement relative to what the market actually needs. Take personal computers versus mainframes. Mainframes were as big as a fridge and objectively more powerful. But network PCs eventually provided good enough performance for most office workers at far low cost and greater convenience. The PC didn't outperform the mainframe, it simply redefined what decent performance meant for most customers. Disruption happens when a simpler, more affordable, or more convenient solution intersects with the evolving needs of the market. The strategic task is not to ask whether the technology is better than what exists, but whether it will become good enough, fast enough, to change the basis of the competition. Step 3. Locate and understand the initial market. Once you've identified a disruptive technology as strategically critical, the next challenge is finding its first viable market. This is not a job for traditional market research. Often, no concrete market yet exists when a company must decide whether to invest. Consider when Edwin Land asked researchers to project sales for Polaroid's instant camera. They estimated just 100,000 units over the product's lifetime. The public simply couldn't imagine what they'd do with instant photography. This is typical. Disruptive innovations often appear excessive, useless, or niche at first. So managers need to experiment and iterate to explore who the customers might be, which features will matter most, and what the right pricing could be. These early explorations are not about optimizing for existing demand, but about uncovering latent needs and new value propositions. This approach also helps build feedback loops. Companies learn what customers want, and customers in turn learn what's possible with the new technology. Apple's launch of the Apple I in 1977 is a good example. While the product itself was a commercial flop, it allowed Apple to gain valuable insights, which directly contributed to the success of the Apple II. And that discovery process requires a different mindset than optimizing for a known market. Okay, now the fourth step. Keep the disruptive venture separate from the core business. Christensen was clear. Disruptive ventures should be managed independently. If they're folded into the main business too soon, it will stifle them. When a disruptive technology serves new customers, has lower margins, or requires different success metrics, it will likely come into conflict with the main organization's priorities: high-volume customers, familiar financial thresholds, and stable processes. So, let the new business breathe. Give managers of disruptive innovation free rein to realize the technology's full potential, even if that means ultimately cannibalizing your existing success. For the corporation to live, Christensen said, it must be willing to see business units die. If the corporation doesn't kill them off itself, competitors will. All right, so that's Christensen's advice. But academics at MIT Sloan have also offered an additional 3 points of advice on how managers can react to the appearance of potential disruptions. 1. Know when not to fight. Christensen seems to believe that no matter what industry or market a company is in, it should fight to maintain control. But not every disruption is worth battling. Calculate the value of winning. Some industries, once disruptive, become so fragmented that there's little value left. If margins are collapsing and barriers to entry are low, the smarter move may be to pivot the business or exit and redeploy resources elsewhere. 2. Leverage what you're already good at. Disruption can be an opportunity to reframe your capabilities. Fujifilm survived the end of analog photography not by chasing digital cameras, but by applying its chemical and imaging expertise to focus on healthcare. The lesson is, your existing competencies may unlock adjacent markets that are more attractive than the disruptive core. 3. Partner with the disruptors. In many industries, smart incumbents invest in challengers. Disney didn't out-innovate Pixar, it acquired them. Pharma firms regularly partner with biotech startups. This approach recognizes that startups bring speed, incumbents bring scale, and both can benefit from cooperation. A leading company can play the role of ecosystem orchestrator. Rather than building every disruptive business themselves, they could partner with a network of feeder firms. When the time is right, the incumbent can consolidate or scale up using its own marketing, supply chain, and distribution muscle, while sharing the upside with its partners. All right, we're nearing the end of this course on disruptive innovation. So let me recap the key points. According to Christensen, disruption follows a pattern. It starts with a low-end or niche newcomer that offers something simpler, cheaper, or more convenient. In contrast, the dominant player has these 4 indicators. It is on a sustaining innovation path, it overshoots customer needs, it is capable of responding, but it flounders as the newcomer moves up market. We've also looked at how disruption is misapplied too broadly. Marquides builds on Christensen's theory by making the distinction between business model disruption and radical product innovation, each requiring different responses. Companies can respond to disruption with these 7 steps. Determine whether the technology is disruptive or sustaining. Assess the strategic significance of the disruption. Locate and understand the initial market. Keep the disruptive venture separate from the core business. Know when not to fight. Leverage what you're already good at, and partner with the disruptors. So that's it. Understanding these aspects of disruption and knowing the ways an incumbent can respond shows that a strategic response is possible instead of a reactive panic. But if you're the newcomer that wants to disrupt, you could also exploit these weaknesses in the dominant player. Our ITONICS Innovation OS is especially suited to this kind of strategic foresight, as well as managing a balanced portfolio of calculated bets and sustaining innovations. You can also use our platform to establish a systematic process to identify and evaluate new technologies relevant to your company. Whether you're managing a multi-year product roadmap or cultivating a startup scouting network, ITONICS provides the tools to collaborate and act with confidence. If you want to see how ITONICS can help your company stay ahead of disruption, just book a demo with our experts. Thanks for watching the course. I hope you're walking away with a more nuanced understanding of the theory of disruption, how to spot it, and how to respond. As always, we encourage you to explore more ITONICS Academy courses and resources to keep expanding your knowledge of innovation theory. See you next time.